Okay. Hi, Brandi Owens here, and I'm sitting here with a good friend, Jen Kotz of Wanderlust Interior Design, and we have just finished recording a podcast with a business consultant we both work with, Loveland, 168 podcast, and we were talking about how chronic or debilitating issues affect an entrepreneur or a small business owner in reaching goals and getting where they need to in their business, and it actually turned out really well. So hopefully there'll be a link at the bottom of this that you can click on and listen to that. But as Jen and I were talking after the taping of the podcast, there was so much more involved in that whole situation, and so we're just going to have a conversation here and hopefully teach you a few things. So thank you for doing this with me. I really
appreciate this. Good morning. Again, I'm Jen Kotz. I so appreciate this opportunity to kind of talk about things, help other people that might have been in a situation similar to what I was in, and just kind of help people to understand that there is help, and sometimes it comes in a different package than what we think it should. We're kind of used to the hospital clinical side of it where you get a prescription and it's supposed to fix you, but sometimes that doesn't actually happen that way.
Right.
Or work the way that we wish it would. So, but thank you again. I do appreciate this opportunity.
Oh yeah, it's exciting for me. We get into such crazy conversations. I've often wished that there was like a little fly on the wall and you guys could hear how we talk. She gets my mind running. But this is specifically about what was thought to be chronic debilitating migraines, and I'll let Jen tell a little bit more of how she came to find me, but we ended up treating a significant chronic sinus infection, and as she and I were working together, there seems to be a piece out there that people are looking for and understanding why they can't solve these problems. So that's really where we're headed. So just let us know what.
Okay. So kind of how I came to find you, when I started my business, it was probably, now going on almost 2.5, 3 years ago. And I've kind of always just suffered from chronic migraines, different triggers. I've worked with neurologists, things like that. And for a little while I thought it was just the normal migraines that were happening. But then it got to the point where it was just really almost like crippling 10-day migraines that I couldn't really do anything to get rid of the pain. But where also there was a lot of concern where I actually did reach out to the doctors is I had 2 episodes of either lost vision or everything was very blurry pretty much for the whole day, in addition to not really a numb arm, but just kind of, something that just feels like it's being held down. And, I went to the doctor for the migraine and they asked if anything else was happening, and I told them about those symptoms. And if you do any Google research, automatically what pops up is a potential for multiple sclerosis or MS. So automatically I was freaking out as a new business owner, finding out that this is potentially, what is issues for me. Something that maybe I thought was just a migraine. Now I'm going through testing, which if anybody knows kind of the process to figure out if you really do have MS, it's a very long, lengthy process that honestly they may not even be able to know for years. So this was something that was kind of like building the stress and frustration because I was just so anxious to know what was going on, what I could do to stop these things from happening, and just the pain itself from the migraines. I mean, I just remember laying on the floor crying, and my roommate just feeling powerless because she couldn't do anything to help me. Like I didn't want anything to be touched on me, no water, no sound. It was just kind of crazy. So at that point, as a new entrepreneur, I've lost a lot of time of work, and if I'm not working, I'm not making money.
Right.
And so, this was kind of earth-shattering for me, because if I couldn't do my job, potentially my business was going to go under. So I just kind of started reaching out, searching for people that could possibly give me some kind of, alternative treatment that wasn't the same medicine that the doctors have already given me for migraines, or for what they thought was seasonal allergies or sinus infections. And nothing had ever really helped. It always kind of came right back. So I reached out, I found you, and honestly for me it was just this like beacon of light, just for you to hear me, and kind of within the first 5 minutes listening to what I've said and piecing things together, and really honestly you narrowed down exactly what it was just in a conversation, not even being in person.
Right.
So to me that gave me a little bit of hope, where maybe I didn't have to go down that long path of, do I have MS? Is this migraines that are getting worse? Whatever it could be. But in that process, I think the first session that we did, already just kind of finding relief, and I personally, and Brandi will tell a little bit more about kind of what we did with the treatments for it and everything, but really approaching it from, a sinus infection, an untreated sinus infection, versus anything else. I think that was our best approach, because that was, to me, I believe exactly what it was. I feel completely different from where I was 3-4 years ago. Just to kind of tell you a little bit of how I felt. I even look back at pictures and I can see where my cheeks and my face were just always so much more puffy, and I thought that was normal. It was just the way that I looked, and
the way that it always was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Big deep bags underneath my eyes, and I'm like, this is, it's life. It is what it is. And just kind of getting to that point of finding, okay, this is potentially the culprit of a lot of long time issues that I've had, not just, something that was happening for me at that time. So that's kind of how we arrived to getting to this point of starting all the different treatments and protocols. And, I've had migraines since then, but they're a lot shorter, maybe a day or two. I've actually found that they usually are, if I kind of do have some sinus issues coming back up, that's usually when I'll get one, but kind of go back and I'll do treatments that we've talked about, and it just automatically starts to relieve that pain and that pressure. So now I know what it is, how it feels, and kind of able to get ahead of that curve, because if anybody's ever suffered from a really bad sinus infection, it's miserable.
It is miserable, and they
Absolutely.
They seem to go on and on and on, and I think that the global you, suffering from this, learn to live like a new norm, and so that's just the way it is, and the way it is every day. And while I'm not a doctor, I have worked with this energy, this ELT, and the therapy that we're starting to talk about anyway, electro-lymphatic therapy, and learned how the body moves and how things drain and how the immune system does what it needs to do. So when Jen called me, because we really literally just had, a 5-minute conversation, and I said, I know this can help, and I know this is what we're going to do. And she was kind of shocked, maybe in a little bit of disbelief, but said, I'm at my end, so I will try anything, is basically where she was at. So I love that, actually, because all the walls of resistance are down to whatever this weird thing is that I do. But I think that, and I, again, not a doctor, and I don't have any science to back this up, just my experience, that there seems to be some sort of difficulty in getting an antibiotic in and getting it up into the head to treat the infection. And so part of it goes away, and it seems that somewhere down deep in those sinuses, which are large and throughout the whole face and in the front part of the skull, there just seems to be some kind of latent infection that harbors in there. So what we're able to do with ELT is break that up, get it to move, get the head to drain, and help you to feel clarity in a way that you may not have for years and don't even remember feeling, really. And then there's very simple treatment methods that we use to actually get at that infection that's natural and non-harmful. And
I think one thing to kind of mention, like what you said, you know, even just the treatments, they may give antibiotics, and what I found going through the process is they did an MRI, and in the MRI they were able to annotate it was a fungal infection versus a bacterial. So sometimes it's also too, you know, being treated for something that it's not the right treatment for actually what somebody's suffering with. So
you actually just very much just nailed what majority of the clients and patients that come through my office with sinus issues is my belief is it is fungal. And but again, I can't diagnose or create those assumptions. It's just what I see. And so you can't treat that with an antibiotic. You can't. You can take them one after another, but medical science knows antibiotics do not treat funguses. So anyway, we're going too far down a rabbit hole we probably shouldn't be in. But the point of this, I think, is to let you all know that there is options out there for teaching the head how to drain, and it's not just ELT by itself. We do natural remedies, and the other thing that was really quite remarkable, we started talking about food. And what I see in my practice working with the lymphatic system and the immune system, there's certain triggers that some people just don't tolerate. And one of them was dairy. Yeah. And so you gave up dairy.
I did. That was a little hard, but it was automatically, I'd say within 3 days. I mean, I know this is going to sound gross, but I almost felt as if you were to kind of picture like sludge in a system, when I really got rid of all dairy, very thoroughly got rid of all dairy, I just felt everything just kind of like drain away. There wasn't this constant like excessive mucus feel in my body. And within definitely about 3 days, I started to feel like that, and it really blew my mind at how much that was actually triggering all of that just buildup in the sinuses and everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And when you say thoroughly got rid of dairy, one of the things you learned that we talked about is that dairy's hidden in all sorts of things.
Yes.
Like, did you know it's injected into chicken breasts to make them look beautiful and plump and whatever? It's everywhere. So when you make the decision to go dairy-free, you've got to really look at labels, look at everything.
The biggest one, exactly. It's a huge binder in a lot of foods that we use. Even some of like the burger patties and things like that, they kind of use a binder and filler, and dairy just seems to be something that holds it all pretty well together. It kind of gives you, I guess, a little bit of a visual of what it does inside of your body if they use that to kind of just gel everything together. It must not turn out very well in the body.
Yeah, well, I think that when you hear that and you understand how far-reaching that it goes, even though you might say, well, I never drink milk, like dairy's not my thing, there are so many different ways that it's coming into your body. And from an immune system standpoint, from what I see, is we seem to like create these walls within our body where the body's like, okay, if you're going to keep throwing this at me, I'm going to put up this defense, and it's going to, we're going to try our best to like protect. And when you're bombarding it on a daily basis, or even in some cases once a week, the body doesn't let down its defenses. And so you're saying, I don't really have an issue with dairy. And I will do like I did with Jen, just trust me. Try this, trust me. And it's going to suck. It's going to be really rough to do this for a full 6 weeks. But my belief is, and my experience with all of my people that I work with, is that when we hit that 6-week mark, the body just like lets go. All the walls come down, all the defenses come down, and the body's like, okay, finally, that's not coming at me anymore. And then that's when we do the reintroduction, and you get a massive response generally.
Mm-hmm. I will say, I mean, I'm definitely not good with, dairy like we did in that 6 weeks, but reduced it quite a bit. But like I told you after the podcast, anytime that I do introduce, and I would say more dairy in like a very heavily processed dairy, I automatically feel it. The next day, my face feels swollen. Even my sinuses kind of start to feel a little bit more filled up, swollen. So, and I know that that's a potential when I basically consume it, that there's going to be a response. It may not be as severe as it was before, or, but I guess it also comes down to what I'm eating, how much of it, and how often. But there's going to be a response.
There will probably always be a response. I think it's lesser than it was because we also treated the fungal infection. Absolutely. And so then you have those tools in place if something comes back. And obviously ELT is here if you need that extra help. Absolutely. And there's just one other thing I want to talk about. As long as we're talking about food. I get kind of, those that work with me know this, but I get kind of a little bit, neurotic's not the word, but I get very specific when it comes to food and the inflammation that's caused in the body, because that is my expertise, inflammation. And sourcing out where it's coming from. ELT is such an amazing, beautiful tool to break up inflammation and move it. But if you're continuing to do something that's pulling inflammation into the body, then we're continually trying to get rid of it instead of getting you to the place where you're, past it. Right. So we started talking about other foods, because with Jen, we didn't really do like a full elimination. But she said to me one day, she's like, I don't really like cilantro. She just said it like that. And I just know from listening to other people, like people love it or they hate it. And usually the people that hate it, it has a funky taste, almost like soap, whatever. But there's a reason for that. And that's because their body's like, I don't like that. And she's like, no, it's fine. I just eat little bits once in a while in salsa and something, I don't know. And I said, and back to what I just said a few minutes ago, this wall that's up, if you're doing it every once in a while and your body's like, I don't like that, I don't know what to do with that. So I asked her again, please trust me, let's do a full 6 weeks off of cilantro and see what happens. I could be wrong. I always preface my suggestions with that. I could be wrong, but it's worth trying. And so you did it. You did 6 weeks off cilantro.
I did 6 weeks off of cilantro, and I also got rid of coriander. Because I believe it's the young and the mature version of coriander and cilantro. And again, kind of going back to what we talked about in dairy, it's in a lot. All of the seasonings, even when I went to grocery stores that had pre-seasoned food, I had to get the seasoning list from them, and come to find out, over half of my cabinet that had different seasonings, it was in there. It was in everything, and I was consuming it a lot more than I thought it was. And I had actually had real allergic reaction to it before, but I didn't think too much of it because it wasn't when I was eating it. It was either chopping it up, feeling it on my hands, or even when somebody else is chopping it up, my throat would kind of close up.
Oh, you never told me that. That's hilarious.
But I thought, because with food, I didn't have the same type of response to it, so I was thinking maybe it's just that. And but sure enough, you know, we went through the elimination, or I did, and you were there supporting me. And I think it was right after the 6 weeks I went to Chipotle, and obviously what we think is the good part is the cilantro lime rice. And I had that, and I'm like, okay, I want to kind of see what it does after that 6 weeks. My whole face swelled up. Like, I just looked like I retained so much water. And that was the next morning. Everything just looked puffy. It was really actually pretty crazy to see how much that I probably already looked like that before, and I just didn't know, because I mean, like you said, you keep introducing it to your body and that wall is up. So I was used to looking puffy face, puffy eyes, you know, puffy around the nose, and not thinking like, oh, that's something else.
From my perspective, working on you, the whole inside of your right face and sinuses were just like instantly stuck. Full.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was remarkable. I actually tell that story a lot when I'm trying to get people to do that. When I'm trying to get them to understand why I want them to do the full 6 weeks, because and to really look deep and dive deep the way you did into the cabinets and the spices and stuff, because you thought it was, I eat salsa once in a while. I eat Chipotle once in a while.
Where there was actual little pieces of cilantro where you think of it.
Well, and back to Chipotle, they are a fully organically sourced company. That's good food. There's nothing bad at all with that food. And so that goes back to something that I say all of the time to my clients and patients. It doesn't matter if you're eating perfect, absolutely perfect. There could be something in there that your body just doesn't like.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, it was, and I'll tell people, you know, the elimination, it was hard, especially dairy for me. I've always been a milk drinker. You know, I love ice cream, cheese. Cheese was the hardest part for me. Butter, you know, all of those things that, because like you said, when you say dairy, people's natural reaction is, I don't drink milk. But they don't think maybe of like, their Starbucks, they get, you know, some kind of a breve or cream or something in there, or butter that's in everything.
Cream cheese on a bagel, or yogurt, or
yogurt. Oh gosh, yogurt and cottage cheese, like all those things that, you know, even then, even then, as I'm saying it, you know, you kind of forget. It was really hard to eliminate, but for me, it was worth it to prove why I was feeling the way I was feeling. Because I didn't want to end up with MS-like, you know, symptoms for the rest of my life, and keep this, is it not, or is there something, you know, more below the surface? So for me, there was a reason to stick to it.
Your motivation was high. It was really migraines. When I met you, that was really rough. You were in a really rough place.
I mean, I struggled, because if anybody's ever really had a migraine, even if your migraine only lasts one day, it then can take a day to 2 days just to recover from how much it just drains your body. So, you know, just imagine 10 days down with a migraine at a time. How many days does that take to even start feeling a little bit, you know, normal again, have energy, and not still sort of feel drained? Especially if I was taking migraine medication, which just, it does a number on your body, additional to everything else. So the motivation was really high to find a solution, a real solution, because I had been through, you know, all of the different sinus infection treatments with antibiotics or allergy medications that honestly gave me really bad side effects. And then just, you know, same thing with migraine medication. You know, I didn't want to keep adding new pills, new medications into my body without figuring out, like, what is actually causing this? Because even the neurologist was kind of like, we're not sure. There's different triggers that obviously you're kind of picking up on. So it's kind of like you're left with an answer of hope with the best sort of thing. And I don't know about anybody else. I don't want to live my life just sort of hoping for the best with my health. I want to be intentional about it, and not just complain about not feeling well, but find a way to start feeling well. And I try to tell people, like, this isn't a one-time, kind of deal. This isn't a do it once or 1 week and you're good forever. It's a continuous process.
Well, you essentially are changing your life, the way you live it. Absolutely. If you spend the majority of your years on the planet suffering with this puffy face and these sinus issues and this one infection after another, and end up in a place that you were in, pretty significant place that you ended up in, you can't go do a 2-week detox and say, I'm great. Because again, back to what I was saying earlier, if you're continuing to put the things into your body, even though you're trying to do yoga and eat organic and you go hiking 3 times a week and you've got your dance class, whatever, you're doing all these amazing things to support your body, but you're still fighting that same issue. So it's hard. It's really hard to think about a life pretty much without dairy, or to really have to pay attention to coriander and cilantro. However, your business is thriving, your head doesn't hurt, your face isn't puffy, and you feel good. You're out enjoying your life now. So it's we just have to, I think most of the time, as people get out and start feeling well and start feeling the changes that they made, it becomes more of a choice and less like deprivation. I can't believe I can't have that ice cream. My life this is awful. I can't live like this. It then changes to, I'm here at this wedding and I really want that dessert and I'm going to enjoy it and I know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know how to take care of that, and you make that decision in those moments. Absolutely. And you live your life.
Absolutely. And for me, kind of like what you were saying, it's not a feeling of like deprivation anymore, because in that process of eliminating things, it's finding so many different alternatives to just cow's milk was the biggest thing for me, because I love cheese, but discovering how good different goat cheeses are, how readily available they are, and I can still enjoy that, pleasure of cheese, but not have to wake up the next day and feel like, my head weighs 1,000 pounds. But also, and not feeling like I just have to stay away from that altogether, but maybe finding an alternative that's, almond-based or something else that makes me feel a little bit better. Because I think the most important part is to not feel that can't have it,
Yeah, that deprivation doesn't serve anybody.
You just spend your life, feeling like you're not allowed to have something. But for me, it's knowing, like, it's not that I'm not allowed to, but I would just choose to not feel the way that I was feeling before. So, that means my health means a lot more than cheese on this burger or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy to come down to something thinking like that. But it makes such a difference, just kind of being intentional about what you eat. It's the same thing that we do, when we're trying to eat healthy. Do we want this fast food, or, do we want something a little bit more healthier? It's just taking that moment to figure out what's the right decision for my body right now. And, once you kind of get into that habit, I think it's pretty easy for the most part. Yeah.
That was really well said. I like that. I remember my daughter went through a significant viral infection in her gut and ended up with what's called partial gastroparesis, and meaning part of her stomach was paralyzed. And so we went through some pretty intense protocols to get her through that infection. And I put her on a 6-week, very, very, very restricted elimination diet, and she felt so good. She did it for 1.5 years. And I remember people would get on her and they would say, "What do you eat?" And she goes, "I eat everything else." That was always her answer. "I eat everything else." And I think we forget that there are so many things out there to eat and so many choices and options, and not just the standard, like, 6 dishes we grew up with and the standard way of doing things. So I like that you said that you went and found other ways to get what you want.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, if anybody's ever, like I used to make it's kind of a perfect example. If I used to make my coffee really, really sweet, a lot of sugar in it. But over time, I'm like, okay, I don't want to take in as much. And eventually I got to a point that if I were to put as much sugar as what I was eating before, now my taste buds are already really accustomed to living a different life. And so I think that's the scariest thing, is people think that you'll always still have that craving, but eventually your body just sort of starts to say, hey, you don't like this anymore, we're not needing it, and so you might have those times where you do a little bit, like you said, have one little piece, but I think it's easier than people think to eliminate things, especially when it's in the name of health. There's so much more out there that's well worth eating, or for me, I guess even touching cilantro.
I don't know if you told me that, but I don't remember.
I don't think you did.
I don't remember that, because then I would have been like, no way. Because people will say to me, I can do a little bit, but if I do a lot, this happens. And a little bit is still causing microinflammation, and that's your exhibit in your head, right? All